This Week in Agribusiness. Our special Christmas edition of This Week in Agribusiness is being brought to you by Firestone. You never farm alone. Well, hello everyone. Merry Christmas to you and welcome to our weekend broadcast in a very special place this week. We'll be taking you to West Point, Nebraska in just a few minutes. It's a community where agriculture is very important, and so are the churches, as a matter of fact. We'll be at St. Mary's Catholic Church there, and we'll talk about the faith of that community and about the industry around West Point. But first, let's go to southeast Missouri, where around Perryville every year, churches open their doors for the Christmas Country Church Tour. Hill of Peace Lutheran Church is a stop we knew we should make. Friedenberg, Missouri, as we visit about this church with Glenn Brickhouse. Glenn, you've been here a long time.
Ever since I was born.
And that's almost 70 years ago, right?
Yes.
Give us a little bit of the history, though, of this church, which goes even farther back and to another location, we understand.
Yes, this building that we're in is the third church. It first started in someone's home across Sinkholms Creek, which is a creek that you cross coming here. Then the second church was built at the cemetery, and this is the third church. This one was done in 1885.
We are in an area that is, about 90 miles south of the Gateway Arch at St. Louis. We're not far from the Mississippi River.
Not far at all.
This is an important area for settlement of Lutherans, I understand.
Yes, there's been many states of Lutherans coming here, settling all over the place, so we're kind of a Germanic community. We took over from the French.
This particular church is not home to a regular service, except for, 3 times a year?
Yes, we had to close in 1980 because we ran out of people, but we have a service at Easter, at Christmas, and a Fall Harvest Festival.
Beautifully decorated for Christmas, we know, too.
Yes. Well,
with a nice real tree.
Yes, that's just from about a mile down the road.
Near here, very good. Who all helps put this together for these 3 events of the year?
We have a Friedenberg Lutheran Historical Society. There's about 10 or 15 people at the max, and we just plan this and decorate and do what we have to do to keep the building up and decorate it and do whatever we have to do.
It's hard to miss the beautiful lanterns in the window there, and those are lit as visitors come in during the tour, I understand.
Yes, they are.
There's a little aroma that goes with it, I would imagine.
Yes, there is, but unfortunately I can't smell it. So.
Well, we are told that it's something that people actually enjoy.
Yes.
Adds to the ambiance.
Yes, it does.
Preserving the history is important to you, I gather, right, Glenn?
Yes.
Why?
This is a Bavarian community. It's just one of the first places they settled, and the church was built out of that community. And I can trace my mother's side back to the town where they came from in Germany, Langenstadt, which in English is Longtown, which is just down the road that way.
Sprechen Sie Deutsch?
Ein bisschen.
Oh, don't test me on it, please. Nearby, there is also a school building, an old school building, and a parsonage, correct?
Yes, the school was built during when the second church was built and the parsonage was built, and then when they moved the church here, then they were already here when the church came. So it's now we have a whole community, but now we've sold the parsonage and the church to a gentleman who's living in it, so that we don't own it, but we try to help. Looking back
under the Last Supper portrait there, we see that the pulpit is there, but it was in a different location at one time, we understand.
Yes, the pulpit used to be where the picture is, with the stairs leading down to the door. Unfortunately, they had a pastor who was, shall we say, portly, and he would climb up the steps and the whole thing would shake, so they decided to move it to where it is now.
There must have been a collective gasp through the congregation when that happened.
One would assume that, yes.
We understand at one time the pews would move here in this church. They were moved around to accommodate funerals.
Yes, the center doors that you came in inside the church weren't there, so they had to bring them around through the side doors, move all the pews together, bring it around for a funeral or a wedding or whatever, and then take them back out and move the pews back out.
I was looking around here as we were visiting a few minutes ago, and I noticed there's a rope going up into the attic. It must be attached to something.
To a bell.
Tell us about it.
Actually, there's 2 ropes. One's for tolling for the funeral, and one's for ringing for the service.
And there is a difference.
There is a difference. When you toll, you just move the clapper. When you ring it, you actually move the bell.
A lot of people wouldn't know that.
Well,
Have you been on the rope on a number of occasions?
I've been on the rope. I haven't been on the tolling rope, but I've been on the ringing rope, yes.
We hear that sometimes when folks come through during the church tours, the Christmas tour, they look at that rope and ask if they can take over.
Yes, they do. They enjoy going up and ringing the bell. We just warn them not to turn it over because it's a pain to turn it back.
I can imagine it is. The building is so beautifully maintained, inside and out. You must take pride in it.
A lot of pride. We're doing what we can with the resources that we have and that we can get donations for. And right now we finally got a good roof on the building, and now we're going to take care of what the roof just damaged, and we're just working piece by piece to get everything done.
We sure appreciate hearing the story here of your wonderful church, and we appreciate the opportunity to spend some time with you. Merry Christmas to you, Glenn.
Well, Merry Christmas to you. Thank you.
Glenn Brickhouse here in Friedenberg, Missouri. One of our stops this year on our special edition, our Christmas edition of This Week in Agribusiness, as we're in southeast Missouri at this point. In the next church we visit here, don't look for the congregation. They've long gone their own separate ways. But in this building, there are some fond memories for the folks who preserve it, where the electricity is turned on for Christmas just a few days every year. We're out in the country in southeast Missouri. We're probably 30 miles or so north of Cape Girardeau to visit with the Millers, Gene and Mike Miller, at a very rural church where no congregation worships these days, we understand, but it's so wonderful to visit with you and to get the story of Pleasant Grove Baptist Church. Mike, as a young man, you did worship here.
Yes, sir, I did.
Talk about it. How old were you?
I was about 10 and 11, and I used to walk across the field with my grandmother, and there's a gate down here at the bottom of this hill below the cemetery. We'd open the gate, of course, and come through and walk up and go to the service here. And then after the service, we'd walk back home. And frequently, the preacher, whomever that was very familiar with my grandmother and her cooking. So every opportunity they had, they would come to her house for fried chicken and dumplings, and grandma's pies. Almost every Sunday, you would see a preacher, whomever was up here, at her house, enjoying the dinner that she would fix.
Gene, to understand that it was food that really endeared you to the Pleasant Grove Baptist Church as well. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. They used to do a basket dinner the fourth Sunday of every July. And we came down when we were dating, and they would put U-shaped tables out under the trees, and then all the farm ladies would fill it with homemade food. And you just grazed for hours eating, and it was wonderful. And I remember one year we happened to get 5 Sundays in July, and it had always been the fourth Sunday, the last Sunday is what we always went by. And they threw this month in with an extra Sunday, and we missed it. We came down the 5th Sunday for it, and it had been past for a week. So that was disappointing.
I can imagine it was. You decorate this church for the tour every year, and you do it so beautifully with the lanterns and such a wonderful Christmas tree with old-fashioned colored bulbs. My goodness, I love that a lot, being an old-fashioned guy. You must take a lot of pride in this church.
We do. It's a combined effort, certainly, and we all take that same pride. There aren't very many of us left remaining to do it, so we want to make sure it's done properly and done right. And as you said, Mr. Armstrong, it has to be old-fashioned. and not the twinkling lights. Nothing wrong with those, but it isn't old-fashioned, so we tried to use the large bulbs, and as I showed you, we have some ochre that were painted with Santa Claus and those types of ornaments along with regular ornaments. So it's a lot of fun.
There's a story also with the chairs here, the pews, if you will, in this church. Do these qualify as pews?
No. Most people that come through the church have never seen the chairs. Everyone has a pew, typically pews in the church. But in 1904, these were supposedly made up in Pennsylvania, and most of them are hickory. And using a steam process, of course, to bend them, they came down the river by paddle boat, and there used to be a landing called Red Rock, just a few miles over this way at the river. And then, of course, the parishioners would go horse and buggy and bring the chairs up here. And some of them are, because the kids would move around, so some of the parishioners took some boards.
Yeah, we can see them, yeah.
And would nail them together so the kids can't scoot around, which is very unusual, as are the chairs themselves.
You said that when you were a young man, you would see sometimes people get up from the chairs and you could see the backs of the chairs on their white shirts.
Yes, sir. No, it wasn't funny, but it was funny. But whatever this material, it's like a paint, very dark, and it was obviously very hot in the church in the summertime, and they would be leaning against them like we are now, and when they would stand up, you would see the stripes off of these chairs on the back of their shirts.
The piano has been here a while too.
Yes, sir. It came in from New York, 1916, and that came by Frisco Railroad, and then of course the parishioners picked it up. There used to be a depot in Minfro. There was a great old train depot down there, and goods coming to and from St. Louis would offload there as well.
Jean, somebody has played that piano sometimes during tours.
Yes, they do. We always have at least one person that will get up there and play the piano, and people will sing. They'll do Christmas carols and hymns, and it's in really good shape. It was tuned about 2-3 years ago. We had it tuned, and the woman that tuned it said it was in remarkable shape for being in this church where it's not heated, it's not cooled, it's in the mice, but it still plays quite well.
Am I correct that even the Rural Electric Cooperative cooperates with you in energizing this church for just a few days each year?
They do that every year for a week or whatever time we need, particularly usually it's about a week. Yeah, they're very good. Citizens Electric does a wonderful job.
They deserve a shout out.
Yes,
so
sir.
do you too,
Yes,
for your passion in preserving this wonderful country church. What a great story, and we appreciate you sharing it with us.
Thank you very much for letting us share this story with people.
Jean and Mike, Merry Christmas to the two.
Thank you. Merry Christmas to you
Thank
too.
you.
Right here from Pleasant Grove Baptist Church, Crosstown, Missouri, as we share with you this Christmas edition, special Christmas edition of This Week in Agribusiness. And to get the story of how this country Christmas church tour started, Mary Jane Buckeye joins us here in southeast Missouri in the town of Apple Creek,
Missouri.
Yeah. How far are we from St. Louis at this point? We're
About 95 miles.
Yeah. You do have some folks who come down from St. Louis, we understand, for the church tour every year, a tour that actually started with only about 6 churches, and my, how it's grown.
The first year, oh yes, it has grown to up to 30-some churches, and about 31 this year, 31 churches.
There's a lot of effort that goes into this, isn't there?
Oh yes, yeah, we have families that do all the decorating, and they all get along good. It looks beautiful, and
They probably start many weeks in advance, I would imagine, in some instances.
with planning, yes, they shop and buy things on sale the year before and plan the whole year ahead. Actually, the theme is a little different every year for everybody's enjoyment.
Now,
And
it's just 2 nights, right?
it's just 2 nights, from 2 till 9 in the evening. We went up to 2 o'clock so people could enjoy the country scenery around here, and the elderly like to travel in the daylight, and then everybody else that likes Christmas lights come in the evening, spend the rest of the time here till 9 o'clock.
Did you ever imagine the success that this would achieve?
I have no idea. I think it's a godsend. It's just a beautiful story behind it. It's a spiritual thing, and I think the Holy Spirit was behind it all. He wants us churches all to share and get to know each other better and all that, and I've gotten that feeling from people that visited here. They came in church with tears in their eyes and said, "Thank you for doing this," and they were from other denominations, so it's a great sharing thing.
That's all the payback you needed, wasn't it?
It is, yes.
You grew up worshiping in this church?
I did. I was born in Perryville the first year, and then I've been here 86 years. And I'm writing my stories of all the celebrations we've had and so on. And I'm going to name it 80 Years on the Apple Creek.
Where would you be without your faith? And don't you just take so much joy in the Christmas season?
Oh, yes. I have strong faith here. And I've always had the strong faith that I wanted the churches all to be one. That probably is behind a lot of the feeling I had. And it's happening. Everybody's sharing and feeling comfortable with each other, the different denominations. And so I think that's a big part of it. So it's a spiritual thing, really.
I can tell that it is. Do you envision it continuing on for many years, and hopefully those after you will do so?
It probably will for many years. People love it so much, and thanks to Trish Ertzfeld, our tourism director in Perryville, she's been doing it on the computer the last few years. The first years I did it all by phone, and just took off from there, so it was supposed to happen.
They need to pay attention then for December of 2022 and make plans to come to Southeast Missouri and see your beautiful churches.
Come to Perryville or Cape Girardeau and get a hotel and stay overnight and just do your whole Christmas thing for 2 days.
Maybe stay for the weekend and come worship, huh?
Come worship with us. Yeah,
Mary
we have
Jane,
a wonderful
thank you.
pastor here that makes a great sermon.
Well, you made our holiday season. Thank you so much for all of your efforts. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. Very happy to be here with you. So thank you so much for coming.
Mary Jane Buckeye visiting here with us about the wonderful country Christmas church tour that they have here in Southeast Missouri. We welcome you back to our Christmas edition of This Week in Agribusiness, taking a little detour now before we go back to Perryville, Missouri, and take you to West Point, Nebraska. At Sabetha, Kansas, Christmas is very important too, as Joan Cabe, sitting alongside her husband Paul, explained to us.
I think it's very festive for a small town. I grew up in a big town, and I just never even thought too much about town and making it as Christmassy as it is here in Sabetha. I just think it's very pretty. It's a short little, 4 or 5 blocks, but they put up the lights, and the stores really decorate their windows. It looks very pretty.
They always have a good open Friday, that all the neighbors come in. It's kind of you really find yourself going there and just having a great community gathering. Everybody.
Santa Claus comes to town during this time, and
they serve popcorn and snacks and some traditions that different stores had when they were kids. So you kind of go in and out and get to eat things. It's just, I don't know, it's a very festive time. And they also have a couple horses that pull a horse-drawn buggy up and down that give free rides. So it gets you in the Christmas spirit, that's for sure. It's always a challenge to keep the local stores going, but that one thing that has happened in Sabetha, there's been enough industry in town that has kept the street well maintained. I mean, the sidewalks are in good shape. They got some new street lamps. They always put up Christmas decorations. The city does really well at making it look like Christmas, and especially if you get a little snow along with it, it really seems like Christmas that we really enjoy. And I think a lot of people miss that in the rural America. We have Christmas Eve services, and most of them do here. We've always enjoyed our Christmas Eve service that we go. We have a Christmas service where we do some singing and the Christmas melodies, and then a short message on Christ and His birth. And then we everybody, they pass out these little electric candles. They went to electric now. They used to be actual flame candles, but they went to electric candles. And then at the end, the whole church shuts the lights out except for those, and we sing Silent Night. And that's always, it's just kind of a good reflection of what Christ did. To me, Christmas season, without knowing the purpose of it, you kind of really can lose the meaning in a hurry. Now, we're not against Santa Claus. I always dress up as Santa Claus for my grandkids. We want to share the joy of it, and then really just what happens, that we have the opportunity to know why Christ came. That's really the gift that is the gift that never stops giving.
We will long remember the enjoyable visit we had with the Cabes there in Sabetha, Kansas. Marysville, Kansas is the town where Don Landau lives and certainly enjoys Christmas there every year around the plant that he and his family operate.
There's lots of Christmas programs, there's band programs. We have a choir that gets together, adults from all faiths get together and sing, put an afternoon choir sing on, a couple hours of singing with treats, to keep people mingling. My right-hand man got on the internet and he found this altar, and so it was from the Newark, New Jersey area, but it was in a church that had would put on a historic register, and it was a tougher part of town, obviously. And they didn't have money to fix the leaking roof and that, and they were allowed to tear it down and move it into a church warehouse down in Atlanta. So that we found it in Atlanta. And it was actually carved in 1857, I believe, over in Austria. And the statues and that you see there are all a tree, and when we moved it or put it up, you could lay the tree over, and of course the old farmers were counting the circles to see how old the trees were that they carved the statues out of. So that was fun. We're quite proud of it. There's a lot of people of faith, and that's very interesting. I think we got either 16 or 17 different churches represented here in our community. The German Lutherans are very strong, and they got multiple churches, not just in town, they've only got one, but you can go 10 miles to the west and go by 6 or 7 German country churches yet, and all active.
But with 16 or 17 churches, it's in a town of much less than 5,000, right?
Yeah, 3,200. So.
That's high participation per capita, isn't it?
That's high participation per capita. And of course, the COVID thing has certainly not helped any of us. I grew up in, in Hanover, Kansas, and Hanover is obviously a German name. One reason I say it was so much bigger, large families. And Christmas was a time you got a gift. We got a new pair of clothes on Christmas. We got a pair for our birthday, and we got a pair of jeans when we started school, in the fall. But that you didn't think of buying clothes in between time in my era, because our folks just wherewithal wasn't there. But it was real common. And then the church services were in my early days as an older boy, where things were in Latin, and so it was much different than now. But then we spent more time in church than we do today.
Our thanks to Don for the visit in Marysville, Kansas, where you see the black squirrels if you keep your eyes open. There's more on our special Christmas edition of This Week in Agribusiness coming up. This Week in Agribusiness. Our special Christmas edition of This Week in Agribusiness is being brought to you by Firestone. You never farm alone. Welcome back to this weekend's edition of This Week in Agribusiness, our special Christmas edition. If you're traveling down Interstate 55 south of St. Louis, you get to the town of Perryville. Take time to go into that town. There's much to see. We made our way into church. Well, up next on this special edition of This Week in Agribusiness, our Christmas edition, we make the stop here at the National Shrine of Our Lady of Miraculous Medal. And we have the chance to visit with the president and CEO here, Don Fulford. Welcome, Don. It's good to have you with us.
It's good to be here. Thanks, Max.
This is a magnificent church. As we've marveled as we've been here at the architecture and the artwork itself. Tell us about this facility.
Well, you know, this church has been around since 1837. It was originally settled in 1818, and then the Catholics began to settle this area. This was the first Catholic, it was the first learning institution west of the Mississippi.
So there's great history here.
A lot of history. If you think about this church, it was here 30 years before even the Civil War.
And a strong tie to agriculture.
Oh, it's amazing. A guy by the name of John Quincy Adams gave us 640 acres, and it grew immensely to over 1,500 acres at one point. And we provided the food and the water, and we have one of the deepest wells in Missouri, and for the seminarians who were coming from all over here to be educated.
You and I were visiting earlier about all the turmoil and all the national strife that has taken place during that period of time that the folks have come here to worship, and it was here through thick and thin, wasn't it?
Yeah, you know, some of the best stories we've heard is are when moms and dads bring their son here before they go off to war. And we've heard tales of that going back to Korea. You know, some of the older gentlemen said, well, my dad came here and said, son, you know, I want you to come home, but I want you to have a strong faith. And daughters with their moms would meet here and talk about their faith before going off to be married. So it has a long tradition here in our community.
One thing you notice in this community, there is that strong, vibrant fiber of faith, and it's not just folks who are Catholic, but the Lutherans too, and other Protestants as well. They're a very strong faith component, and it makes this community a little different, doesn't it, Don? You've lived in other towns.
Yeah, I came here from Kentucky. I'm a Kentucky guy. My wife's side are big farmers, and we came here. It's a big farming community. We're in rural America, and it's a strong sense of work ethic. It's a strong sense of character, and obviously a strong sense of faith, because this is where Catholicism, as well as the other faiths, began to bloom as people settled the West.
The church tour is something a little different, isn't it? And it brings together people of various faiths into other houses of worship. There's something neat about that, Don.
Oh, the church tour that's going to be happening is spectacular. We have people from all faiths, people who enjoy history, but also enjoy the huge heritage that's here, the faith heritage, when they come into a church like this, and they explore many times what it used to be like. Back when there are churches on this tour that don't have electricity. So it's a wonderful place. It's a wonderful tour.
I suppose some of those who minister would hope that those who maybe are not with faith would come into these halls and perhaps be touched in some
Never
way.
underestimate the ability of a quiet, peaceful church and a song like Holy Night, Silent Night, Holy Night, to inspire somebody back to their faith.
People often come here to see more than just the church. What else is here, especially if they're planning a trip through southeast Missouri sometime? What should they see right here on these grounds?
Well, we have a grotto that's more than 100 years old. It was built in the early 1900s when the threat of war was going on. So as you can imagine, a church like this needed a quarry close by to build its rock walls. So that they turned the quarry into this beautiful grotto. There's a rosary walk here. It's the largest in North America. There's also a beautiful cabin on the grounds. And of course our heritage, the cemetery is here as well, that marks many of the great men that have gone before us.
There is a tourism office here, is there not?
Oh yeah, there's a great tourism office here in, not only here in Perry County in our region, but also here locally.
So folks are welcome. You would extend open arms and say, come see us, huh?
No matter your faith, come see the history, come see the spectacular views, and maybe just come and reflect a little bit. It's a beautiful place with beautiful grounds, and just a chance to get away a little bit.
Don, Merry Christmas to you, sir, and thank you for opening up your arms to us. We sure appreciate it.
Merry Christmas to you too, Max.
We enjoyed the visit with Don as he shared with us their mission there in Perryville, Missouri. They will visit on the phone with people from all over the world who have special requests, often prayer requests, that they will make as they talk on the telephone. We're going to change locations. We're going to take you to a very important cattle-producing county in eastern Nebraska on this special edition of This Week in Agribusiness, our Christmas visit. We told you earlier that we would be in Nebraska before this hour was over, and through the wonders of electronics, here we are in the community of West Point at St. Mary's Church on our special Christmas edition of This Week in Agribusiness with veteran cattleman and longtime cattle industry icon Harry Kenobi here at West Point. We're not too far from your feed yards.
No, we're not. We're just 2 miles out in the country. And so I always describe West Point as 3,500 people plus 1,500 in the community. So they count me in. So it's 5,000 people.
They include you as one of theirs, huh? This is an interesting town. Now, first of all, West Point, I would hasten to point out, is in the eastern part of Nebraska. But how did it get its name? It was the railroad.
It got its name because in the beginning it was the farthest point the train went out of Omaha to West Point, is what it did. And that's, you know, there's 9 West Points in the United States, and most of them I have researched, the train went that far.
Is that right? Interesting. Probably not the military academy, though, right?
No.
As you take a look at this community, what's big here other than agriculture? I mean, clearly agriculture would be first and foremost, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it is agriculture. We have 310,000 on feed in the county, 10,000 cows and calves. But our hospital, our medical facilities, and rest home employs 300 people. So they're the major employer. But on the other hand, you don't want to have one entity of 1,000 people be the major employee. All the cattle industry around and all the things that feed the cattle industry, and that's why we're so solid.
You glossed over those numbers rather quickly there, but I want to come back to the number of cattle in this county. This has to be one of the biggest cattle counties in Nebraska.
Well, it matches some of the other counties with cows and calves. We're 310,000 on feed with 10,000 cows and calves in this row crop area, which it's hard to believe there's that many cows and calves.
I was shocked when you told me that, knowing how much row crop production there is in this part of the world.
So that livestock brings a lot of business to town, from livestock hauling to livestock markets to feed places to all pharmaceutical places. We have 10 veterinarians in town, but they go out from here is where they go out like that. So a lot of people come to town because there's a lot of opportunity here.
How many other communities of this size do you figure could say they have 10 vets in town?
I don't think none. I don't think there'd be any.
We were here quite a few years ago for the Cattleman's Ball of Nebraska, and that was a neat event. A one-day, well, maybe 2 days, but one weekend event with Orion Samuelson and I were here, and we saw firsthand, in person, the kind of pulling together that this community is known for.
Yeah, we had about 600 people help prepare for us. It took a whole month, and we had 4,500 people at the dinner on that Saturday night, and we raised $1,495,000 for cancer research.
Raising that kind of money. Now, that was the cattle industry from all around the state playing a role in that and pitching in, but this community has done quite a bit on its own, has it not, from funding its own efforts?
We raise approximately $1 million a year between all kinds of things that we call it. The school has a J-Fest thing, $150,000 a year, and so many things. The hospital raises money, and put them all together, we raise about $1 million a year. And then in the last 10 years, we have built probably $10 million worth of structures, like the latest one, Veterans Memorial Park for $1,250,000, and they're all paid for and they're all donated. Now, some of them are donated by local foundations, but they're all pretty well in the community.
It's local people stepping up to the plate to make things happen.
Right.
Then, right? You had a terrible accident a few years ago, and I know they rushed you into Omaha when you badly injured your spine in a farm accident, but most of your medical attention has been right here, has it not, Harry?
Yes, I was in Omaha for 60 days, and then I came here 2019, the 1st of July. I've been taking rehab ever since, and today was my 525th session.
525. You must have some good therapists.
Oh, great therapists, and it keeps me going. I mean, I know it's going to be all meal. They can't do there's no pills or medicine will get me better, but I can walk 550 feet a day now. In the beginning, I couldn't do 5 feet.
Let us also hasten to point out you stay very active in advising cattlemen and women on their marketings and guiding them along that path. You are still very much engaged in that, aren't you, Harry?
To tell anybody that sees this program, you got to do more than just rehab. Part of rehab is being occupied, your mind, because otherwise what would you do after 1 hour of rehab?
You have a wonderful support team too at home, don't you? And
Yes.
with the people with whom you work
Yeah.
in your enterprise.
Oh yeah, we have 13 people. We have 7 people in the office that help me. They're all commodity brokers, and that really helps. And way back too, there's people watching this program. The NCBA has helped me a lot because my customer base is from them.
We're here in St. Mary's Church at Christmas time. The church is so important to any community, it seems to me, in rural America, but this town is well churched, isn't it? I guess,
Oh, it's
guess
well
you would
churched.
say.
We have 4 Catholic churches in the community and 4 Lutheran churches, and I have belonged to this one since I was 8 years old. Otherwise, before that, it was one of the other ones.
I'm not going to let you go. You stay right there. I have a couple more questions for you as we continue our visit with Nebraska cattleman Harry Kenobi here on this special Christmas edition of This Week in Agribusiness. We'll be right back. Back at St. Mary's Church, West Point, Nebraska, here with cattleman Harry Kenobi on this special Christmas edition of This Week in Agribusiness. Harry, what was Christmas like when you were a young man growing up in rural Nebraska?
Well, it was the normal thing, the Santa Claus thing and the gifts and going to midnight mass. We used to always go to midnight mass a lot. They still have midnight masses, but we don't go anymore. I was younger than my brothers and sisters, like 11 and 15 years younger, so I was all by myself more.
Do you think that made a difference in how you were shaped, to the fact that you were that much later child?
I know. My sister always says I was babied, but she babied me.
Oh. As you take a look at, as we're in this house of worship, what role do you think the churches of West Point have played in fostering this community and growing it the way it has grown and taking it through tough times?
I had some tough times now, and it's helped me. I've always felt that you could have anything in life within reason if you let the rest of the world have what they want. And when we do that at West Point, we let the rest of the world have what they want. Our friends around, our neighbors, the Veterans Memorial Park, the Boy Scout Memorial Park, the theater that we built. And it just, when you give, and the camaraderie of bringing those people all together helps a lot. The theater, I always say this about the theater. It's a group of people that would have never been in one church. They would have never gathered any other way than in the theater, and that's their thing.
As we're sitting here, Harry, there have been some recent tough natural disasters in the heart of the country. The tornadoes that hit, especially in Kentucky and also in southern Illinois, the fires that we've had not too many days ago, for example, in Kansas. You guys have gone through some tough times. What do you say to somebody who is enduring a difficult time and with the kind of challenge that you faced yourself?
Well, 20 years ago, there were fires in Nebraska, and I and some of my friends hauled hay out there. I was at a cattle convention in 2000, I believe, in Denver, and that was when the hurricanes were in Louisiana. And the cattle people told me they needed hay. They couldn't pasture their cattle because of all the salt. So we gathered 11,000 one night at the Cattleman from Nebraska people, and I went there. When we had the floods in Nebraska, people mailed me $37,000 the first week because it was in the world news, and I got 5 loads of hay donated, and and part of that, you get around and people know just who will do what, and it isn't always me. I know in a different situation who will do what.
But what you're telling me is, especially in the cattle industry, you've found personally that people step out to help. They really lend a hand at times like these, that their faith and their family and indeed their friends and contacts through the industry make a difference.
Sure. That $37,000 came from 15 states. And the cattlemen just didn't have their funds set up yet, but they just mailed the money to me and they said, you know where to go with it, so I did. So I got the hay from eastern Iowa and South Dakota and Minnesota.
It's hard to miss when you're visiting with Harry, and as you ride around town with him, as we did, that there's a real sense of giving in this community, that the people give back to make things happen in their own town.
The Franciscan, in this time of Christmas, we have to look to our Franciscan charity group as our sponsor, as really the reason that the healthcare in West Point has sustained this so long. Their mission through Christ, helping others, has really resonated in this community and has really perpetuated healthcare to the forefront of our community. Their mission truly does work in this time.
Terry, there are communities that really stand out because of the faith of those who live there. This is one of those, isn't it?
Absolutely. Faith is brought to us by the Catholic faith here, as we're in this great hall church, but our other members of Christ in our area, our Lutheran church, our Methodist church, our whole community, especially in this time where inclusion is so important in our societies. West Point has done well with Latino community here too, and I think our community is truly faith-based.
There are those calamities that occur in rural areas from time to time, natural calamities, tornadoes, and fires, things like that. This community probably has not been untouched through the years with those, one could imagine.
No, it hasn't. And in your interview with Harry a little earlier, I heard him, what sets West Point aside, it truly is the giving. So many people want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. And that's what giving gives you, that opportunity to be a part of something. We had a Trails and Pathway program that we were able to raise $1.6 million towards a pathway in West Point. Many of those donations were under $500. And just allowing people to be a part of something, the hospital, this church, they all want to be a part of something bigger than themselves, and that's what perpetuates the goodness in us all.
I always say I'm a little bit of a fraud in my position. I'm lucky because I just get to help support those successes, because really that's what makes West Point unique, is the people who are willing to reinvest in our community. They give of their time, they give of their treasures. It's amazing what can be done, and it always amazes me when somebody steps in a new position, and I don't know if for example, we have a new priest in our parish, and we were talking about a couple of projects that he would like to see done in our school system, and he's like, we really need to get this one done, so maybe we should hold off on the other. And I looked at him and I'm like, this is West Point. Don't worry, we'll get them both done, and if there's anything else on your to-do list, we'll tackle that too. And he's like, people keep telling me that, and I'm like, give it time. You'll realize the generosity around here is you can't compare it to anywhere else.
We've enjoyed every visit we've made to West Point, Nebraska, and to Perryville, Missouri. We know there are communities like these elsewhere in rural America, but these really stand out because of that sense of community and that importance of faith in these towns as well. We'll be right back on our Christmas edition of This Week in Agribusiness. All year long, we appreciate these visits, the opportunity to come into your home, but maybe never more so than at Christmas time. On behalf of our crew, my colleague Orion Samuelson, Mr. Mike Pearson, Greg Solier, the guys behind the scenes as well, Angelo Lazara, Ryan Rue, along with Tim Lowe and Carl Zahn, we say very Merry Christmas from all of us at This Week in Agribusiness. You've been watching our special Christmas edition of This Week in Agribusiness. It's been brought to you by Firestone. You never farm alone. Closed captioning for This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Kubota. Shape your world.